Just because you could build something cool or something that's technically interesting doesn't mean that people are going to buy it or pay for it or even use it.
Welcome to Aha Moments with me, Kobi Omenaka. In this episode, I'm joined by Robert, Desi, Desmond, the CTO of Leadsie.
We have a few enterprise clients, and it sounds counterintuitive, but even enterprise clients, you're still selling to people, and there still is an element of emotional buying. And also social. People want to show off to their bosses.
Leadsie is a lifesaver. If you work with clients as a freelancer or an agency and you help work with their paid accounts from Google Ads, Facebook, all the way through to LinkedIn, then you need to listen to this conversation with Robert.
People don't buy just for the functional reason, but actually a lot of people buy for the emotional reason.
Robert talks about how he found the aha moment for Leadsie, and also the main thing you need to do to find the aha moments, being the simple thing, which we've talked about time and time again in this podcast: talk to your customers.
Yeah, so Leadsie, we're a B2B tool for marketing agencies, and the process of giving access is quite often painful.
Robert, I wanted to talk to you, first of all, again, thank you for joining me. I want to talk to you about your background and going into Leadsie, because I think it's a fascinating product and service and something that I certainly wish I was using a lot when I was freelancing, but we'll get to Leadsie in a second. Can you tell us a bit about your background, how you became a CTO, essentially?
Yeah, so I did computer science at university and have been kind of a software developer since. So normally like being in a much darker room, coding at a computer, like writing actual code, making things work, making things happen. Those are the things that I really enjoy. I've worked at a bunch of different companies as a consultant, and then starting my own. A whole different range of things, from like the Telegraph fashion website I did some maintenance on, to like big bank brokerage systems, which was I had to wear a suit, which was very strange for software developers these days. And then also starting kind of my own businesses. Over the course of my career, I've kind of moved away from necessarily coding every day. I still enjoy it, but I think the biggest lesson that I've learned across my career is just because you could build something cool or something that's technically interesting doesn't mean that people are going to buy it or pay for it or even use it.
Well, definitely going to dig into that aspect. But when you say, I like what you said about being a coder and being in essentially a dark room, tapping away on the keyboard. But then you also talked about making your own businesses. So you went down a consultant route where you kind of get parachuted in, you work with people for a bit, and you jump out again with the same parachute, presumably. How do you take that step from being a coder to actually I'm going to make my own things and hopefully sell them on to people, or hopefully just get people to use them for fun?
My path has been that I was a consultant, as you said, kind of for other companies, and I was always interested in all parts of the business. So I did some sales calls. I won some work. I said, actually, this is kind of interesting. Let me do the work. I did some follow-up maintenance. And then I kind of went to the accounting team at the consultancy I worked for, and said, hey, can you teach me how to invoice? I'd really love to know. It sounds really complicated, like accounting and numbers, and I don't even know the legality. It's like you just put the customer name and how much you're going to charge them on a Word doc.
Send and you get an email. You send that email, and hopefully they pay you.
And that's it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is so I basically can do all of these bits. And so I took the step away from the consulting and ended up, away from the big consulting company, and then started my own, where it was basically just me. And I worked with a bunch of different individuals and some teams over the years as a freelancer, probably much like yourself. And then back in, oh my goodness, I don't even know how long ago now, probably 12 years ago, I met a Dutchman who was starting a business called Story Terrace to write stories for people. And I sort of fell in love with the product, and we got on really well. And we started this business where we found freelance writers who would come to your parents and grandparents, get their life story down and create their life story into a book for future generation. And so
this is where I first met you, was at Story Terrace.
Yes.
and I've seen a few of these other kind of companies come up in the past as well. Story Terrace, you went on the screen, but you did go to Dragon's Den. A couple of members of your team, didn't they?
Yeah, fortunately, I've avoided the screen time on Dragon's Den. I don't think I would be made for that. But Theo and Rutger did that, which was amazing, and what an experience.
But I love Story Terrace, and I love the idea. And this is, obviously this is our Aha Moments podcast, and it's interesting, like the disconnect between here's a product idea and here's the actual product when you get it in your hands. And this Story Terrace is a physical product manifestation, and when you get it in your hand, it's a different experience to, I guess, the process beforehand. And the way I explain it is, I think Howard Kingston was a chap that introduced us both initially, and he was telling me about Story Terrace, and he said, "Yeah, Kobi, I just didn't understand what this was." And then I went to their offices, and then I had this book in my hand, and it just felt this like yearning to open this book and read this interview that happened between a writer and a kid's parent and a kid's grandparent. And when I went to the office and looked at it as well myself, I was like, yeah, I fully get this. I fully see why this is such an important and valuable thing to have. And yeah, I mean, did you get that kind of experience? Did you get that kind of feedback generally with Story Terrace?
Yeah, I think having the physical book is something that's really powerful, and to be able to see, particularly when it's a grandparent and them seeing their younger self on the cover of a book that they can then give to their family and say like, hey, here are all the stories that like you don't know about me from when I was a kid. That's definitely a huge part of the aha moment. I would also say there's an interesting one kind of almost before the purchase. So about half of the sales are typically for a parent or a grandparent. So it's not someone buying it for themselves, or someone buying it for their parent. And what's really interesting is most of the time this comes after they've had a kid themselves. And you also are a father. And like when you have a kid, you quite often, I don't know if you've had this experience, but you think about your own childhood and when you were born, and you think about kind of your parents and where were they? What were they thinking? How did they go through this crazy experience and lack of sleep and all of these other things? And of course, it was a different time. And so like all of these ideas come up. And then when people sort of find out about Story Terrace, they're like, oh my God, I would love to know those stories. So it's almost like an aha moment before of like asking these questions and then going, oh yeah, I can get those stories. That would be amazing.
No, I love that. I mean, when my kid at the moment, he's a fussy eater, and I don't know what struck me, but I remember as a kid loving scrambled eggs, but I hated like egg yolk. So boiled egg, boiled egg, fried egg. I'd have the egg white, but the egg yolk would be like discarded. But I don't know what point that actually stops happening now, because at the moment, I love the poached egg, for example. It's one of the best things in the world. But now I'm seeing my kid and I'm trying to feed him some food.
I can tell you everything is a phase from my experience. My 9-year-old didn't like pizza until he was 6, and our middle son Sebastian loved pizza. So we couldn't do like kids' food nights because one wouldn't eat them. And now it's swapped. Now the older one likes pizza and the younger one doesn't. It's all mayhem. But you forget these stories as well. So I think it's important to document them.
Yeah, and this is where Story Terrace comes into play, right?
Yes. So
how did you, with the aha moments and being a growth guy, you've been in products and tech and you said you worked across a few areas of the business. Let's start with Story Terrace. How did you find out that these are the moments that people hooked into your product, and then how did you then try and get people to those points as soon as possible to get them hooked in and get them down the funnel?
So I can have maybe a moment of humility, which I think comes from all founders and particularly product people as well, is I think we didn't realize this for a long time. It took us a long period of time, and we used to sit in a room much like this with a whiteboard on the wall and say, this is why people buy. But really, it wasn't until we sat down and spent a significant amount of time talking to our customers that we actually finally realized half of the customers are the kids and they're doing it. All of them seem to be parents. That's interesting. They're like new parents.
Yeah.
And so my mantra since then, I mean, I come from the software side and writing cool tech to, in Story Terrace's case, to move the books along and make them sort of do drafts and write comments and all of this sort of stuff, collect photos, do the covers. But it was only when we sort of dug into, hey, why are people doing this? Why are people not doing this? That we sort of said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. And this was years into the company that we actually decided, let's sit down and talk to customers and have those almost jobs to be done type interviews.
Jobs to be done being, I'm a keen proponent of that since I was introduced to it, and an aha straight light bulb moment for myself when I first read I was competing against Luck book. Can you explain a bit what jobs to be done, JTBD?
Yeah. So it's interesting. My aha moment, my realization was when I was listening to the audiobook of Lean Startup, and it was
by Eric Ries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was actually cycling home, and I'd stopped at a traffic light, and there was one phrase that was something along the lines of, we would get a customer in, we'd have a conversation with them. They would tell us not what we were expecting, and we would fire the customer, and sort of move on and say they're not the right customer. Let's find someone else who does have that mindset of what we think the customer should be. And it was this realization of like, oh, we're meant to be adding value for the customers. We're not just trying to be smart and think for them. I remember I even pulled over at that light and sort of sat on the side of the road and was like, oh, okay, we've been doing it all wrong. We need to really listen to those customers and make sure that we understand why they're buying. And it's not a functional thing, right? Jobs to be done is very much, people don't buy just for the functional reason. There is always a functional part of something that you're buying, and your product needs to do that well enough. So in Story Terrace's case, it's actually creating a book and actually getting like something physical at the end of it. But actually, a lot of people buy for the emotional reason of like wanting to know what their parents went through.
Yeah.
Also the social reason, giving something to their kids to tell them or to maybe explain to them why they are who they are because of their upbringing of stories that they might not have told previously in life. So there's all these sides of emotional and social, and that's normally actually the way people buy. We'll talk about Leadsie as well, which is B2B, and we have a few enterprise clients, and it sounds counterintuitive, but even enterprise clients, you're still selling to people, and there still is an element of emotional buying and also social. People want to show off to their bosses, or even the other side we've seen is their bosses want to show off to their team and say, hey, I'm investing in you to make your lives easier. Look at this new tool to make everything better.
Like you say, a lot of my work is B2B, and I always say you sell it to people, so you have to connect with the person on their level. You're not connecting with Apple, you're connecting with the specific person who's got jobs to do, or a career pathway, or trying to achieve XYZ goal. But then reframing that and throwing it back to I want to help my team out. I want to show my boss that I'm doing a great job and I've helped to save them money and also improve efficiency. Makes me look better. I hadn't really considered that.
It's one of these things whenever you talk about customer interviews or jobs to be done, people don't realize why they buy something, or people don't realize their own emotions. And so you have to sort of read between the lines and press them on why they said something. And quite often people will lie and they'll say something else because you don't want to be seen as, oh, I'm trying to impress my boss so I can get a raise because like I'm driven to make everyone around me happy. People don't have that self-reflection and also probably don't want to admit it.
I'd love to, at this point, well, first of all, give us an introduction to Leadsie. I think it's a fantastic product.
Yeah, so Leadsie, we're a B2B tool for marketing agencies. We help marketing agencies get their clients onboarded. So let's say you're working with a new brand. That brand needs to give access to their Facebook page, Instagram account, Google Ads, Analytics, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of these different platforms the marketing agency needs access to post to run ads. And the process of giving access is quite often painful. People don't know who has access.
It's the worst.
Yeah. And also, it's not what marketing agencies want to do. They want to do the creative stuff. And after you've done this whole sales pitch and you're like, yeah, let's work together. Let's do these amazing campaigns. It's like, oh, can you give me access? It's like, oh, how do I do it? And all this sort of stuff. Anyway, this is where Leadsie comes in. We give you a link that you share with your client. You can send them via an email, or you can just send it even over WhatsApp or however you communicate, and they click the link, they click connect with their Facebook account, they select their pages, Instagram accounts, ad accounts, whatever, click connect, and it's done. We work through the APIs. It normally takes like a minute to do, as opposed to sometimes half an hour, sometimes an hour. We've even heard of people taking months to get the right access just because people are lazy, or they put it off, or they're confused by Facebook Business Manager. And normally we solve that pretty quickly.
That whole process bums me out. It really does. In the past, before Leadsie, I should say, it bums me out. And it was literally a roadblock to me, like onboarding new clients when I did a lot more freelancing stuff, because I knew it could be a torturous route. And I had one client took 2 weeks for us to get connected. Facebook was the worst. Facebook was definitely the worst. Now Meta, that was the worst system, but because it's just so difficult to do, and it makes you both sides you look bad. On their side, they think they're giving you access, but they haven't given you the right access. On your side, you're like, I think this is a link you need to give me. Oh, is it my personal account, or is it my business account you need to give? And then there's different layers, because you have the ads layer, it's admin, and it just becomes like, why is it so hard? And then there's Leadsie. And when I first heard about Leadsie, I was like, this is an aha moment for me, speaking right now. It's like, this is exactly what I needed like 5 years ago when I was doing this a lot more, because it really was like a roadblocker to getting more clients. Really, it genuinely was.
This is exactly what we've heard from talking to agencies. So we didn't start with this idea. We had an original idea of creating like an audit tool to plug into your ads account and say what's going well, what's going badly, what's performing well, how you can make some changes. And in those discussions, and they were video calls, most of the time they were like, yeah, it sounds great, yeah, that'd be really useful, but no one actually ended up, we made a prototype, but no one actually bought it. But what was interesting, we kept asking questions about their day-to-day and where they've experienced pain, and this exactly what you've just said came up so many times. And you can feel like there's even in the way that you just spoke, you can feel like there's this extra tension and pain, and you can even see with your body, like you put your hands over your face. It's such a stressful, painful experience. And Johannes, my co-founder, and I, we sort of looked at each other. We did, I don't know, 20, 30 interviews, customer interviews like this. We kept hearing the same thing. We're like, this sounds pretty niche and pretty boring, but like there's some real pain there. We can probably help make this better. And so we did, and that's kind of when Leadsie was born. And I can talk to you, we will get into kind of aha moments with Leadsie as well. But just in terms of customer interviews, seeing that pain even on your face as well, just that's exactly it.
My face is living testament to why we need Leadsie. So at what point did you decide to pivot away from the auditing side of things? And it's interesting you say that you thought that the onboarding side was boring. What about the auditing side? That's not nominally the most exciting part of things when you talk about people wanting to create ads and, generate leads.
Yeah, it's interesting. So like let's start with the auditing side. The auditing side, auditing sounds that's a terrible word. You're right. But when you look at an account and you see pretty graphs and you say, this ad is performing like this and this one's better and this is what it visually looks like, and here are the headlines that are working better and all of this sort of, like, that's a fun, exciting part about marketing. That's why you do marketing. It's like, how can we sell to people? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really fun. Onboarding and getting access. Who has admin access? Who has editor access? Who has view only? Like, no one cares about that, right? You just want to get started. You want to see the ads. You want to see what works, what performs well. Yeah, and I think it's still the same today. I think that's why our product still exists and is going strong, is because no one wants to be in the admin panel. And now we've expanded to all these other platforms. And although they're not as painful as Facebook, they still take up time. No one wants to be in them. And if you can do it in one click, it's much easier.
And I'm sure it makes it, because the onboarding experience for any business, whether you're a SaaS or you're joining a gym, that sets the tone for your experience and your relationship with the company. So I'm sure, I'm maybe forcing words into your mouth, but what kind of anecdotally or not feedback are you getting from the agencies? Are they having less churn from their clients? Are they having better relationships, from the off?
Yeah, you've I feel like you know this problem inside out and you've experienced it. That's exactly right. Like we've heard of, in fact, on our homepage, you'll see in quite a lot of our ads as well, like the headline, this jobs to be done that is most important is impressing the clients. So we even have this on our homepage. Like agencies want to impress their clients. In fact, we've had quite a few referrals from clients and brands who've been onboarded with Leadsie with one agency. Then they work with another agency and they're like, can you just send me a Leadsie link? Like, that was so amazing. And actually, agencies have come to us and told us that their client demanded to get a link because it was so easy and not painful as a Facebook business manager is.
I mean, I absolutely love that for you. I think it's fantastic. I mean, let's dig into the aha moments with Leadsie. Are they? Before you tell me what you found through your customer interviews, and I love the way you're doing customer interviews as almost like run of the mill. I'm sure it's continuous learning there. Were the initial aha moments what you expect them to be once you kind of pivoted to the new format, and what are they?
So the biggest aha moment in the Leadsie product actually comes at the end of the process.
Right.
So once they've given access, and we have these nice green circles with a tick inside that say, yes, it's all connected, like you're good to go. When people see that screen, much like you had the pain putting your hands over your face, they have the opposite reaction. They're like, that's it. Like, I don't have to deal with this anymore. And you can see that. You can like feel it. Even though you're not in the same room, you can feel it over a video camera. We always do video calls and you can see it. But when they see like green tick, it's like, oh, I get it now. I don't need to sit in any of these admin panels anymore. Yeah. I can just send this link. So that's the biggest aha moment. I will also say, like, when we were deciding to go after the Leadsie product or create this product, one of the first demos we had showed them the process where they log in and they select their account and they click grant access. And as we were doing the demo, the whole app just crashed.
Oh, no.
The whole screen went white, and I sort of, like, this was very early on in our journey. I think we'd maybe had a few paying customers or something, and my heart is like pounding really hard because we're sort of betting the farm on this at that point. And what the guy said in the demo, I'll always remember this. He's like, "Oh, that's okay. Things go down all the time. How can I buy this?" Like, he still wanted the product even though it didn't work. I think because we'd explained the whole process, and he still had this vision of the future of like, oh, I don't have to go to business manager anymore. So even without seeing the green ticks, just like the being able to communicate to where they will be if they use the product is, I think that's also part of the aha moment, right?
I think that's perfect. When people have described some products to me and I've gone, yeah, I know that, I need that right now. I haven't even downloaded the app, or I don't even know what the website is yet, or which shop to go into. But when someone conceptually explains something to me and it just sinks into my very fibre of my being, then that sounds like what happened with that demo. Yeah,
exactly. It's really that was a game changer. I've worked on a few different ideas and products in my career, and this was a palpable difference. You could feel it. And so whenever someone asks me, like, oh, I've got this idea for something, and it's like, do you feel that pain? Do you see the sort of eagerness in the potential client's eyes? That's what you're really looking for when you're building a product.
With that green tick, then, are you engineering, and have you engineered Leadsie to get people to that green tick as soon as possible, even though it's, still saving it's minutes rather than half an hour versus weeks?
Yes. Exactly. We are trying to get people to that spot. The green tick is it's the nice visual representation, but essentially we want them to get to they're connected and they're ready to go feeling. The green tick gives you that feeling. There's many ways that we've done this through the middle of the giving access and helping people to choose which account, and if they don't have permissions, showing them the messages of like, oh, don't worry about this, or you don't have the right permissions to try and get them there. But also from the very first onboarding of Leadsie, it takes like one click to sign up with your Google account, and you'll immediately have a link, and you can start sending that out. Yes, you can configure it and choose different accounts and turn on different services. But our product is very much like, hey, here's your link. Like, you don't even need to set anything up to create that experience. You can kind of go from the off. So yeah, everything is designed to try to get people to that experience of, oh, everything's connected. It all feels good.
And then in your analytics on in the platform, is that being represented in your flow and your analytics as well?
Yes, it has. I will also say that this is an interesting one when you're building products. Quite often you're building a product and you're adding more and more features and integrations, and you make the product more complicated. So it's a bit of a tough one as a sort of product manager to make sure you remember, no, this is why we're building this product. This is where we want to get people to. So just as an example, we've added on all of these different integrations. And right now, to connect all of these things takes quite a long time.
Sure.
So we're trying to, in fact, we're right in the middle of redesigning things so that you do one piece at a time. Right now, you do Facebook and Google and TikTok kind of all back to back, but we're actually in the middle of changing it. So you do Facebook in one go, you get that aha moment, and then you're like, oh, okay, now we can do Google. And you get there quicker and you get the feedback quicker. And yeah, so yes, exactly that. We're trying to engineer it, and we're in the process of quite a big to make it sort of give you that feedback quicker.
Nice. And you've just, as we record now, or a few weeks ago, you've just launched the LinkedIn side of things. And almost, is that completing the channel suite, as it were?
It's a good question because we keep hearing of more and more services that people use. Facebook is the biggest one. Google's kind of the second biggest. TikTok and LinkedIn are also up there. We also just launched WordPress last week. Okay. Which is another highly requested one. And YouTube is coming soon. And there's a bunch more platforms. Bing Ads or Microsoft Ads or however we call it is also in the pipeline. Yeah, our plan or our plan for growth for Leadsie is just be the place where you get access to everything. Not just platforms, but also things like branding guidelines, logos, colors, maybe even contracts or something like this in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Don't quote me on this. This is something still is something still to come, but this is from our customer interviews. We want to be the place where you do the whole of the onboarding, because right now we're just a piece of it. And we save a lot of time in that piece, but there's also a few things around it we could maybe help to take on.
Because I mean, the branding guideline is a key thing, definitely, because the person you're speaking to as you join an agency or start working with a company might not necessarily be the best person to give you the branding guideline, and then you might inevitably get it via a SharePoint link or an email, and when you come to actually needing to use it, it becomes lost in the ether. So if it's there in the dashboard within Leadsie, like straight away, then it's this is another like easy way to definitely just cuts through a lot of hassle, right?
That's the plan. Yeah, this is like an extension of the paying experience. We're talking to our agencies, and we are a piece of the puzzle, and there's parts before and afterwards that they're like, hey, can you also do this? They're basically asking us to take away some of their pain. And we're like, yeah, we can probably build something like that to help solve that problem. So it's almost like an aha moment for us as having these customer conversations like, they're doing more stuff. Okay, that's where we should be building our product.
How do you then kind of vet the level of pain that they have and check with other people?
Yeah,
it's a pain that's felt amongst others and a pain that you can monetize, essentially.
That's a really, really great question, because a lot of, I would say, traditional business people, I'm going to say MBAs, would say you've got to see some data, you've got to see a graph, whereas I think, especially in the startup world, a lot of it is like gut feel. If you have, like we have, tens of customer conversations and they all say pretty similar things, or the essence of what they're saying is the same, then that's more than enough to kind of go after it. You know now also that I've done some teaching with 500 startups and Techstars on some other startup accelerator programs. One of the things I talk about when doing customer interviews is very much you should be looking not at a hypothetical future of like, oh, wouldn't it be great if, I don't know, you were more fit? Like everyone's going to say yes to that, obviously, but you really want to know, what are you doing for that problem right now? And if they're spending time and they're spending money on trying to solve that problem, then that's where you actually have something that's worth building.
Yeah.
The same goes for like fitness, right? It's like you'll ask everyone and they'll say, yeah, I want to be more fit, but how many people are actually going to the gym or eating more healthily? Yeah, I definitely need to do more of that. and like, I'd love to be more fit, but I'm not actually doing anything. So trying to sell me fitness products nowadays is probably quite difficult. I just got a text from a gym I used to belong to saying, oh, do you want to resubscribe? It's like,
No.
yeah, I do, but I'm not going.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I do, but also it's not going to happen. That's where a lot of these hypothetical questions really sit, right? When you say, do you want to be fitter? It's like, yeah, I do want to be fitter. But then if there's a way for you to ask and get a concrete actual answers to, but will you actually be fitter? Will you actually do what needs to be done to get fitter? Then that's a different answer to the question. And you can't answer that. People can't answer that at that time. So a lot of these questions, when I've seen customer interviews in the past where they're asking these hypotheticals, there's so many different variables that go into that. And one of them, a big one, is lying. Whether they believe it or not, it's just like,
I've lied to you. You're also a young dad, and like, how many times are you like, oh, I'm good? In fact, you told me that you went to the gym earlier this morning, which I'm very impressed with. But the amount of times I've lied to myself and said, you know what, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and go for a run. And then, I don't know, we have a bad night with the baby and it's just like, oh no, screw that. I'm going to stay in this warm bed. Like, how many times have you even lied to yourself?
Yeah.
Even though you might want to do it. And you might buy a product, right? You might buy an app to do the 7-minute fitness thing, but it's not sustainable if you're not actually doing something about it.
100%. So we've talked about Leadsie and the aha moments, and I want to know about your favorite aha moments in products that you've, one or two products where you have had, either, prior to even downloading the app, like I've had with a few cases where you've known what the aha moment is for you, or, after a minute of using it, where you think that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah, this is quite a good place to segue because you're into cycling as well, and I'd like to maybe ask you a question.
Sure.
Of like, well, I've got two questions. Let me ask the higher level question about the aha moment first, which is like, when you talk about an aha moment, are you necessarily, like, quite often we also talk about early adopters. Mm-hmm. Kind of like in this innovator's dilemma, it's like this idea of, you need a type of person who is an early adopter who will purchase something really quickly and they won't question it. They won't need social approval. But I actually think that everyone is an early adopter for something and we're all laggards for other things. And you probably have some ideas in your head about products that you just immediately buy. I can talk about one, which is Zwift. So this is like the turbo trainer sort of video game. So I'm a big gamer. Obviously, I'm a massive geek, so I'm big into games and I like cycling. It's like there's this app that's a game about cycling and you can cycle on a turbo trainer and get fit and race in like a multiplayer online game and get
like World of Warcraft for cyclists.
Yeah, exactly. And as soon as I saw the trailer for it, within about 10 seconds, I'm like, I'm buying this. And I went out and bought a turbo trainer and I bought a subscription.
And I mean, back then, especially when Zwift started, you're spending £1,000 for this kind of setup. And this is something that within a few seconds of you seeing an advert, you knew what you needed and you knew it was for you. And you'd bought it. That's
exactly. Yeah,
that's insane.
Spot on. How did you find out? Did you ever become a Zwiftie?
I never became a Zwifter because I know the guys that started Zwift, and I think it's a fantastic product. I use Turbo Trainer Road, which is a different product.
Yeah.
And the main thing that divides me from Zwift is because I really enjoyed. So with Zwift, you're on your bike and you're going through all these glorious scenic routes and it looks amazing, but what I realize is that kind of hour in the morning I could use it to watch films and TV.
Yeah.
So I was quite happy with Trainer Road, which is a lot more simple and gets you the fitness, but also then I could watch Better Call Saul at the same time.
Yeah. Great.
And not be distracted by the video game aspect of things. But I know so many people who've cycled through the winter because of Zwift, and I fully get it.
I always find it fascinating that there are some things that I just immediate, like before I even know that it works, much like the demo I talked about, like I just bought it, right? Like it's just spent money, don't care. I'm in love with the idea even. Like another one is, so one of the most cool aha moments I've heard is Peloton.
Right.
And I don't know if you've heard this. I have only heard it once. It doesn't seem to be a story that goes around a lot. But in the early days, they were trying a whole bunch of different things, trying to sell online, different messaging, all this sort of stuff. They ended up with a physical store in like a shopping center, like one of these pop-up places. And what they found was if they could get someone in who was passing by and kind of taking a look at it, get them to put on the big headphones, get some sort of good pumping music going, get them on the bike, get them cycling for like 30 seconds, at least a minute, get the heart rate up, then inevitably what would happen over and over again is they would sort of take the headphone off and say, "Oh my God, honey," because they were typically with their husband or wife, and say, "Oh my God, we got to get one of these. This is amazing." and talk about like manufactured aha moments. But like if you can generate that feeling that you get, I remember the CEO mentioned that they sold, if they could get someone onto the bike and get them to have that experience, they would sell the Peloton bike about 50% of the time.
That's an insane conversion rate.
Which is insane when it's like a $2,000 bike, right? And we could talk about Peloton and their sustainability and how they've freighted since. But I always found that was like an amazing aha moment. And I don't quite know how you find that other than just by trying things and then realizing, oh, this is like, I guess you see in their eyes, the veins, like the blood is pumping and they're ready to buy.
But I think that there's a few steps before that, right? Obviously, we talk about that 50% conversion rate once people get on the bike. But then there's first of all, are people going to be in that shopping mall? Second of all, are they going to be receptive to being called into a random place by someone they don't know? And all these, obviously, the funnel is massive, and but the people that actually step into that are already potentially predisposed to wanting to be fitter, or have a bike somewhere that's maybe gathering dust, or they are looking how to stay fitter in the winter, or they want both people in a family or more people in the family want to get fitter and want to do something that's easy without having to go to the gym when it's raining. And so they're going through all these steps, but by the time they get on the bike, all these things kind of melt away, and the physical, real aspect of things, just visceral aspects of things, come to the front. And it kind of ties back in with what you're saying about people doing things for emotional reasons, and that's been a huge kind of driver. And you're saying that with the B2B aspect, where maybe showing off isn't the right word, but showing off to the bosses, or showing that there's continual development for your colleagues and teammates and your subordinates, people that work for you. That's a huge reason why people are using Leadsie. It's fascinating. Just fascinating.
Just talking about that social aspect of it, and just because we had a call just last week with a very large enterprise client who the reason we've sold them is because a new team member came into their company and they wanted to show off to their team and be like, "Oh, I can make our process so much slicker. They were like our champion to sell us within the company and get us sort of bought in, because they came in and they wanted to shake things up and make things so much better." And it wasn't, we have to functionally do things better, but they really just wanted to show off to their boss, which is kind of counterintuitive, I would say.
I think showing off to your boss is a great thing, and also means that you're going to start off your work life, your career with them on a stronger footing.
Yes, exactly. Talking about aha moments, I don't know if you've had this, but when the kids go to daycare, quite often there's a lot of apps around, and there's a whole different bunch of experiences you can have. Have you had this? Yeah.
I can't remember the main app we used to have, but when we were in London, and our son was going to the nursery there, and I said, "By the way, there's this app you can use," and we're like, "Fine, sure." And then suddenly we're getting pictures of him like playing and like eating his food and things like that. And then we went to we moved up to the Northwest, and the nursery we went to there didn't have this app or anything like it. And we were so disappointed that we couldn't get the blow by blow feedback of, if you'd been to the toilet.
Exactly. So you've already jumped to it, but the real value is you want to know, you don't send your kids to daycare. Okay, there's a functional aspect of it, of like I need the kid out of the house so I can do my work or get on with life. But really, you want to make sure that the kid is like well looked after and happy, essentially. I think that's really what it comes down to it. And if you get a photo of your kid looking really happy and playing and eating and doing whatever else he's doing, like that's amazing. Like that's so good. We've had a few nurseries. We had one nursery where the teacher, I think it just must have been in their handbook, they had to take a photo, and they took like a blurry photo and the kid never looked happy, and we were like, this place is terrible for a son. But as you know, you can get a kid to go from a massive frown and looking miserable to a massive smile very quickly by making loud noises or jumping around or whatever. And so like actually for these apps, one of the reasons you're buying it is to make sure your kid is happy, and that's where they should be focusing their efforts. And you see this as well.
No, love it. Absolutely love it. Where can people find you? We've got the got a Leadsie. Can't do it properly yet. To at Leadsie online. I've enacted the Zoom feature on my webcam. I don't know how I do that. It happens, but it happened at the perfect time there. You see, it's not going to do it again. No. Okay, so anyway, at Leadsie. Leadsie.com, Leadsie. I'm Desi May, DEZZYMEI. I'll put all the links in the notes for where you can find you and contact you, and get people using Leadsie because it helps you. You can show off to your boss.
Exactly, love it.
Show off to your team. We've got Leadsie, it makes life easier, and you can start creating more. Perfect. Cheers, Robert. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much, Robert, aka Desi, for chatting to me on this podcast. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you and learning everything about Leadsie. It's something I'm super happy that you guys started because it's an absolute game changer when working with new clients and onboarding them and getting them connected and getting their ads up and running and leading to their success. If you want to get in touch with Robert, aka Desi, please get in contact with him on LinkedIn. Links in the show notes, links in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Also, the link to Leadsie is in the same places. Whilst I have you here, please do like, subscribe, comment, share, and review this podcast. Comment below if you are watching on LinkedIn. Comment below if you're watching on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, repost, review if you are listening on any of the platforms. It really does help more people listen and hear this podcast. It would be really appreciated. From me to you, thank you. And I'll see you in the next episode.